Okay, so moving on, we find that in this passage in Matthew 15, the disciples come and tell Jesus that he's offended the Pharisees. Jesus does offend people. He offends people by pointing out the truth. And if they're in error, they don't want to hear the error, they want to continue in their error. And so they're offended by what Jesus says to them. Now, on this occasion, it does come down to the commandments of men and the commandment of God. It comes down to the issues I've already mentioned about the added laws. But it also comes down to an issue which is relevant actually in our relationship with Jewish people, with Judaism, and with the kosher food laws. Jesus said, "Hear and understand not what goes into the mouth defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a man." Now, one of the issues which has been raised from this passage is that Jesus is here taking away the kosher food laws, which you'll find in Leviticus chapter 11. You know what the kosher food laws are? Anyway, there's certain foods are clean, certain foods are unclean. You eat the clean foods, you don't eat the unclean foods. Now, rabbinical kosher has added a whole lot of things which you don't need to know about. Basically, the two things which you find in the supermarket or in the restaurant if you go to, which you don't eat, basically are pig and prawns. You don't eat pork and you don't eat shellfish. Okay? That is what is, if you want to eat biblical kosher. Has things about locusts and other things which are probably not going to get served up unless the New World Order decides that we have to eat those instead of meat, but that's another story. But basically, those are the two things which if you want to eat biblical kosher, just don't eat pig and don't eat prawns. Simple as that. Now, in Mark's account of this, you have an addition which is said here. It says, "Do you not see," this is Mark 7, verse 19, "Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach, and then out of the body. In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean." Now, actually, you won't find that in this Bible, because this Bible's taken from a different manuscript translation. That is from the NU manuscript, which is the translation from the NIV. Some people say it's an addition. Some people say it shouldn't be there. But basically, if it is there by authority from God, you could say that Jesus is saying here that all foods are clean, therefore you can eat pig and you can eat prawn and you can eat what you like. And that's a big question which some people wrestle with. And certainly if you're a Jewish believer, then you certainly wrestle with it because you're told that you mustn't eat those things. You have another passage in the book of Acts where Peter has the sheet which comes down with all the different animals in it, and God says, "Rise up, Peter, kill and eat." And Peter says, "I can't eat anything which is not kosher, won't pass through my lips." And God says, "What God has cleansed, you must not call common." That's prior to Peter going to preach the gospel to the Gentiles. So there is a phrase here which appears to be doing away with the kosher food laws. And when you come to Romans chapter 14, Paul says that basically on this issue of dietary laws, you're free to choose whether to eat kosher or not eat kosher, whether to eat vegetables or meat. You can be vegetarian if you want, you can be not vegetarian. It's up to you. It's a matter of conscience. It's not something which God lays down the law on. On the other hand, some people say that Jesus wouldn't have considered eating pig to be food anyway, so he's not saying you can eat pig. Can you see that point? So there are different issues relating to this. I'm not going to labor this point. What you can see, actually, if you go through the New Testament, is it doesn't give you a list of dietary things which you can eat and which you can't eat. It tells you not to get drunk. It doesn't even tell you not to drink alcohol. So there are issues which you can see which are left to your conscience of how to behave and how to act. If you are a Jewish believer, then for conscience sake, you may want to keep kosher as far as not eating the forbidden foods from Leviticus 8:11, but it's not insisted in the New Testament. Come to Islam, it is forbidden to eat pig, so you've got different issues on this subject. When you look in the New Testament, you'll find that there is no direct ruling saying what you can and what you can't eat. It comes down to a matter of conscience. And certainly this was actually necessary because the New Testament was going to be spread as a missionary religion, if you're going to go to preach the gospel to people, then you had to be able to have fellowship with them, had to be able to eat with them. And if you put up a wall saying you can't eat certain foods, and you must be circumcised, you must be keeping the Sabbath, then it would be a barrier towards people from a non-Jewish background coming to faith in Jesus. One of the issues which actually dealt with in Acts chapter 15. But you can see it is an issue, and it's an issue which does cause problems, especially for relations with Israel and the Jewish people. And certainly as far as the rabbis are concerned, the Levitical laws are not to be changed at all, and they're very important, and you must not eat the forbidden foods. Okay, so that's another thing. We should watch what we eat, by the way, and don't eat junk food, things which cause obesity. Don't drink alcohol to excess and get drunk. Certainly don't take drugs and alter your mind. There are things which we shouldn't put into our bodies, but it's clear that God has given us a conscience, and he's given us understanding to know what to do and what not to do. And we can't say from the New Testament that it is forbidden to eat non-kosher food.